Because if you want to do something extraordinary, you have one job. Leave your fellow humans in awe. Now, when you think about my job as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as an athlete, as a speaker, as a whatever you want to be, you've got to get so good at that thing that when people see you do it, you make them experience the most potent human emotion, and that is awe. To get that good is a terrifying journey of self-discovery and confronting who you really are. Because you cannot make change until you acknowledge where you're actually at. My thesis in life is it doesn't matter who you are today. It certainly doesn't matter how you were born. The only thing that matters is who you want to become and the price you're willing to pay to get there. Now, the irony is I start about as far from pursuing greatness as you're ever going to get. And my parents taught me to be a good employee, to keep my head down, do as little work as possible, and avoid punishment at all costs. And that was real. That was my existence. I cheated my way through high school because I knew that I needed to get good grades, but I didn't want to put in the work. And so I worked in a paint factory, I worked in a door factory, I worked in a paint warehouse, a paint store, and I was too lazy to go get a different job. And so I literally just always took whatever was before me. But I had this sense that I could do more, that I could be more, that there was something that I was meant to do. I didn't know what that was exactly. Now, the irony of my life is when I went to leave for college, I almost chickened out. In fact, I did chicken out. And the only reason that I ended up going to college was my mom forced me to. And so I said to my mom, you know what, look, let's just forget all this. Let's call it off. It's going to be really expensive. I'll just stay here. And my mom was like, over my dead body. And she pushed so hard to get me out. And in that moment, my mom gave me the greatest gift anyone could have ever given me. Because my mom supported me. She was my biggest cheerleader. But when I asked her why she pushed me so hard to leave for college, her answer, totally without malice, was I always assumed you were going to fail. You didn't have the drive. She was like, you were so lazy in high school, but I didn't want you to live a life of what if. I didn't want you to wonder what your life would have been like if you had at least tried. But you didn't show any signs of being capable of doing what you've gone on to be capable of doing. Flash forward a few years. I go to the man who would become my father-in-law, and I asked for his blessing to marry his daughter. And he said no. Now here's the thing. He did not misidentify me. He was very right to be concerned. But I remember him asking me a simple question. Tom, how do you plan to take care of my daughter? He had come from this very small village in Cyprus. He has one of the most extraordinary tales of rags to riches I've ever heard in my life. As a kid, he would eat meat once a year because that was all they could afford. I've been to the village that he grew up in, and when I say village, I mean village. This is crazy. It is like a couple hovels in the middle of absolutely nowhere after you drive on this death-defying road for like an hour in the mountains. It was bananas. And I was like, how does somebody come from this and then run one of the largest shipping companies in the world? Now, this is where he comes from, that he worked his way from ground zero, man, a dirt patch in the middle of nowhere, to living in London and running one of the largest shipping companies from a high rise. It's this extraordinary tale of transformation. And so he's looking at me, a young 20-something kid, and when he says, how do you plan to take care of my daughter? My answer is, sir, I know what you see before you is a broke, undereducated kid, but I'm the most ambitious person you've ever met. But let me tell you, he was skeptical. And the reason he was skeptical, and let this sink in, this is about 15 years before I built a $1 billion company. I would lay in bed for up to 4 hours a day, every single day, because I couldn't motivate myself to get out of bed. I didn't have a job. My girlfriend, now wife, was working, and I had one thing that I had as a responsibility every day, and that was to make her a sandwich before she came home for her lunch break. And the only thing that got me out of bed was shame. So you have to understand, this was somebody who was lazy as had no idea what they were going to do with their life. I had no idea how I was going to pull it off. I was absolutely terrified. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw me staring back, and I knew how lazy I was. I knew how afraid I was. I knew how insecure I was. I knew that at my core, I wanted people to like me, and I was terrified that they had every reason in the world not to like me. But instead of becoming someone who was worthy of self-respect, who was worthy of their respect, all I was trying to do was campaign. I was trying to posture. I was trying to create the illusion that I was something because that seemed like I could do it fast instead of just buckling down and doing the hard-ass work of becoming somebody new. Because I had one failed misunderstanding. I believed that my talent and intelligence were fixed traits. I was born a certain way, and life was about making the most of what I'd been born with. What I did not yet understand is the reason humans are the ultimate apex predator, the reason that we have taken over the globe in a way that no other species has, is because we are the ultimate adaptation machine. It is the animal that can change the fastest to a changing environment that becomes the most dominant species the world has ever seen. It is our very nature to change. That is what we are wired to do. If you look at human DNA, we have roughly 20,000 genes that encode traits. So you can go to the gym and bust your ass and train your body and change your physique. And we've all seen it happen with bodybuilders. We all get that they came out of the womb weak just like everybody else, and they put themselves under an ungodly amount of stress and strain, and they pushed themselves every day, and they had this just unimaginable amount of discipline. And from that, they are able to transform themselves into somebody completely unrecognizable. It is amazing. And because it happens on the outside, we all get it, we all believe in it. We look at athletes and we understand that they work their way there. And so as shame was the only thing that would drag me out of bed, I didn't understand that the same thing I believed to be true of my body was true of my mind. I didn't want to feel that way anymore. I didn't want to be ashamed when my girlfriend came home and I had gotten out of bed just moments before in a panic. I didn't want to have the conversation anymore where my girlfriend had to pull me aside and say, "It's not cool that you're wearing your pajamas all day. It's not cool that you never do your hair." And I began to make a choice. What you build your self-esteem around matters. And whether you realize it or not, each and every one of you has something that sits at the core of how you feel about yourself. And from that, your identity, your sense of self-worth, your self-esteem, it is all built around that thing. And I will tell you the trap that most people fall into, that I certainly fell into, that led me into hiding in bed for 5 hours at a time every morning, was that I valued myself for being smart, for being right, for being good, for being worthy, all incredibly fragile traits. So you can understand that is a terrible strategy to have this very fragile thing that holds my entire sense of identity and self-worth. I'm smart. I meet somebody smarter than me, and I don't think, what can I learn? Because I think an old dog can't learn new tricks. This isn't about pushing myself and changing my mind the way that I can change my body. This is about survival, emotional survival, and getting into the psychological immune system. The psychological immune system is powerful because if you want to do something extraordinary, you have one job. Leave your fellow humans in awe. Now, when you think about my job as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as an athlete, as a speaker, as a whatever you want to be, you've got to get so good at that thing that when people see you do it, you make them experience the most potent human emotion, and that is awe. To get that good is a terrifying journey of self-discovery and confronting who you really are. Because you cannot make change until you acknowledge where you're actually at. If you understand where you're weak, then you know where to spend your time building skills. To me, the gap between where you are now and where you want to go is a gap of skill set. The learner is the only identity that I have ever found that is anti-fragile. Now imagine being able to build a belief system, the thing that you build your self-esteem around. If all of that were tied to something that is truly anti-fragile, that the more somebody comes after it, the more robust it becomes. Being a learner is that answer. Once you know where you are weak, you can begin to build yourself. And that is my thesis on life. You get to build yourself in any direction you want, in any way, to become anything you want. There will be an extraordinary price to pay, but you can go in any direction. I believed that the human mind couldn't change. I believed that it was fixed. I believed that my talent and intelligence were just what they were. It all seemed true. So once you decide to believe, the world is working for me, once you believe that, you start looking for the ways in which that was powerful. How is the worst thing that ever happened to me actually secretly the best thing that's ever happened to me? And so suddenly I started saying, how is this shame of sitting in bed, how is this the best thing that's ever happened to me? But the reality is that's how shapeable a human being is. And I had made decisions, I had chosen to believe things, I had chosen to value myself for things, I had built my self-esteem around things that were not moving me forward. And so I began to change my belief system. I began to change the things that I value. And once you realize that you can choose to believe something new and thusly get a different result, everything changes. And that's where you begin to build yourself. Now, building yourself begins with intention, clarity. You have to know who you want to become. You've got to have this clarity of focus, because until you know exactly in what way you are trying to serve people, you don't know what skills you need to acquire in order to leave people in awe so that you may become extraordinary. Skills have utility. Learning how to swim better makes you a faster swimmer. Building certain muscles in your arms and in your shoulders, all of the different things that go into getting great at any sport, all of those things must be learned with calculation. They must be practiced and rehearsed over and over and over. You have to push yourself long past the point of boredom. Boredom kills more people in the pursuit of success than any hater will ever kill. Boredom is the great killer of dreams. Boredom. Because people don't have the focus, they don't have the clarity of what they're trying to achieve. They have not built into their life an intoxication for what they're trying to accomplish. I used to big brother for a kid named Rashawn. I failed Rashawn. I spent 8.5 years with him. I didn't realize that he was being beaten by his adoptive mother. I didn't save him from a life of poverty. I wasn't able to change his mindset, and I have to face that. I have to accept that I had a moment, I had a chance to change somebody's life and I failed. But once I own that, I can begin to realize why I failed. It's not a mistake. That the company that I'm building now is all about transmitting mindset at scale, because I'm thinking of Rashawn. So at moments where I'm bone tired, I have that clarity. And when you have the clarity and you know where you're trying to go, then it becomes clear about what you have to train at. What are the things that you have to train into yourself? But the only way to do that is to have a self-esteem that's built entirely around being the learner. Why? Because you get the shot to the head, the nugget of gold at your feet. It says, you suck at this. That hurts, man. That's hard to own. It's hard to face. And there's 1,000 voices in your mind telling you all the reasons why it's somebody else's fault and it's not your fault. But the reality is, the moment you do that, you're giving away your power because you're not looking for a way to change. You're not looking for a way to shape your skill set. Remember, between where you are and where you want to go, it is a gap of skill set. Now, I'm not a born entrepreneur. I don't have any entrepreneurial instincts by birth. When I first got involved in business, I remember my only contributions to our conference calls was to say goodbye. And I remember I used to get so excited. Here it comes. We're wrapping up. This is going to be amazing. It's my chance. Goodbye. And I got to say something. But at that time, I just needed to learn. I needed to pay attention. I needed to see where I was weak. And the constant barrage on my self-esteem that I wasn't the smartest person in the room, that I wasn't right very often, it was unrelenting. And I remember saying to myself, all right, man, you got two choices. You can leave. Like, you don't need to be here. You don't need to want to become an entrepreneur. That doesn't have to be your life. But if you really want to become extraordinary, you've got to separate your self-esteem from being wrong. You have to. Because otherwise, you're never going to see the opportunity to get better. So what are the skills that you really want to get good at? And that goes back to that clarity. What do I need to get good at in order to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish? It does not need to be something that somebody else values. It needs to be the thing I have chosen to value, that I have built into my life, this worship around getting good at that thing. And because I value myself for pursuing that, and I value myself for admitting when I'm wrong, and I value myself for staring nakedly at my inadequacies, every day I'm getting better. But I'm begging you, I am begging you with everything I have. Remember that just 15 years earlier, I got out of bed solely out of shame. My mother thought I was going to fail. My father-in-law did not want me to marry his daughter. Brick by brick, day after day, I transformed myself. It was not an uncovering of something that was real and already there. It was simply acknowledging I am a hopelessly average human, but humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. So I can change. I can become whatever I want. And I just became single-mindedly focused on how much I could grow. And now that I was getting value and self-esteem out of growing instead of out of being, everything in my life changed. It does not matter who you are today. The only thing that matters is who you want to become and the price you're willing to pay to get there.